So, as you guys have probably figured out by now, every time this mic gets broken out, we're talking about something serious, and today's video is no exception. This week, we're going to be discussing the Uvalde school shooting that left tragically 19 children dead and two teachers. I am not here, and this video is not going to be backseat quarterbacking. It is not going to be weighing in on the gun control debate or arming teachers or anything like that. I have my own personal beliefs, and I vote the way that I want to see things go, but that's not what Prep Medic is about. So, this video, what I want to talk about is the strategies of law enforcement and different tactics that are utilized, hopefully inform some of the discussion that I've been seeing going on online, talking about what somebody should have done, what they could have done, how they were trained. This video is purely from my experience. So, for those of you that are new here, I was a reserve deputy sheriff in central Iowa for a number of years. I was on their SWAT team, on their entry team, and their team medic. And then I came out to Colorado where I serve as a tactical medic with two different SWAT teams in the area. Here, I am not sworn. Over there, I was. So have a little bit of experience, but I'm not sitting here claiming to be, some crazy operator that has all the answers. And you will never hear the words besides me saying it right here. If I was there, I would have, because I've been a part of enough really critical incidences where I know that you don't truly know how you're going to act until you're in that situation. So with all of that being said, let's jump into it. And no intro today because I don't know, this feels a little bit too solemn, a little bit too close to home, I guess. One other thing I'm going to throw out there is that we don't know a lot about this situation. It's going to be months before all the facts come out, before we have a good timeline of everything that happened, the reasons behind certain decisions. The news, whether that's local or national, believe it or not, is notoriously bad at reporting things factually. They get a little snippet of information, they run with it, make headlines, get a sensationalized version of everything. Now, there's a lot of incriminating stuff coming out, and I'm not saying that's all going to be false. But I am saying that there's going to be revelations to come with this whole story. So just keep that in mind as we go through this video. The first thing I want to talk about is general police strategy when it comes to active shooters, SWAT teams, contact teams, all of that stuff, just to clear up some confusion, because I've seen a lot of online debates on what people are supposed to do. And I'm not saying this is necessarily what they're going to do, but this is how I was trained. So first and foremost, in an active shooter situation where you have active killing, somebody is going around a school with a gun, you hear shots. If you're the first officer to pull up on scene, the training has always been in every class I've ever taken. You get out of your car. If you have a rifle, you get your rifle and you run to the gunfire and you confront the shooter as fast as possible. That is not the safest way for the officer to respond. That is not how we respond to a lot of other things. But in this case, we risk a lot to save a lot. So you have to intervene quickly, and you have to intervene with a lot of purpose. So you're not clearing rooms as you go. You don't have back cover. You might be alone. If you have another officer, you can link up. You can form what's called a contact team. But the general rule of thumb is if there's active killing or if there are people inside that are actively dying, you're going to run to the threat and you're going to stop the threat as fast as possible. There's that strategy. Now, when we come to tactical entry strategies, that one's done by your patrol deputies. Whoever shows up first, you go. The second kind of tactic that has come into this debate is going to be your dynamic entries and that kind of thing. So a dynamic entry is a little bit slower than that contact team emergent response. A dynamic entry is going in, you're moving fast, you're clearing rooms, you're dominating as you go in, and you're making sure that everything behind you is secured and you're moving forward towards the target. This is fast. It's an older strategy used by some SWAT teams. It still has relevance in some emergent hostage responses, things like that, but it's a little bit less common now. And then the third tactic utilized by tactical teams is going to be your deliberate entry. So this is what's used a lot of times in your search warrants, in your barricaded suspects. And this strategy is really the safest for the officers when there's not an active loss of life. This is where you'll breach a door. You might do like a hold in the front entryway or something. You might do a breach and hold. And then you're just going to very slowly clear each room super deliberately until you get to the last room where you believe the suspect is. And then you use a lot of de-escalation techniques to get them out. And lastly, I might have misspoke. Lastly, you basically have surround and call out. That's where there's no loss of life. You're not worried about anything. And you're not going to put anybody else in danger. You're going to surround the structure and you're going to call the suspect out to you. And you have literally all day. You might start putting some gas into the house. You might breach some windows, do constant calls. You might put robots in, but you're not putting anybody in that situation. And that is the safest for the suspect, and that's the safest for the law enforcement officers. A huge, 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 huge emphasis has been put on your deliberate entries recently. So we used to do dynamic entries for like all warrants. You just run through the house. I didn't do this. I came in after dynamic entries kind of died out, but you'd go through for everything, whether that was a warrant, whether that was hostage rescue, anything. You'd go through the house, clear it really quick, bust through the door. And the thought was that you'd have a lot of speed, surprise, and violence of action is kind of what it came down to. And what they really found most of the time that is not the appropriate response. We just need to go slow and make sure we're doing things right, which is where that really slow, methodical approach comes in. So that is preached in every SWAT school I've been to, in every tactical class I've been to. They preach slow entries. But I think that's gone a little bit too far and it gets in people's heads. So you have leadership that's really afraid to do anything more than that. Not necessarily at the agencies I'm at, but I've seen that. I've heard of that happening where they're going to do the surrounding call-outs. They're going to not go in, even when I personally believe it would be a better choice to do that because of the potential for loss of life or life safety in that building. Now, all of that's pretty irrelevant because at the Uvalde school shooting, that's a school shooting. And generally, that would be a response. You get there, you get through the door, and you run to where the gunfire is coming from. Now, there's some talk of, well, maybe they had trouble breaching the door. Maybe they couldn't get in. A steel outward-facing or outward-swinging door, is notoriously hard to get in. Taking active gunfire, waiting for a shield, waiting for SWAT. I've heard all of those things, and I don't really know which one's the truth, if any. What I would say to that would be you aren't going to wait for a ballistic shield. A ballistic shield is a nice thing to have in some situations to provide cover, but in my opinion, it's a school. You have a lot of different entry points you can get into, windows, different doors potentially, you name it. Get a ladder from the firemen and go to the second floor if it's that kind of school. I don't know. I don't know anything about the structure. So there's a lot of different entry points to utilize there. Even if there's not active gunfire, in my opinion, I think that is a situation where you have to go in because you have credible evidence to believe that there are children dying. Maybe the gunfire has stopped. Maybe there's no more active shooting, but you have children potentially bleeding out. You have potentially survivable injuries that will not be survivable after, say, I don't know, an hour. So with that, that is the strategy for school shooters, is to go in as fast as possible. The other kind of misconception here is I've heard people say, well, they were waiting for SWAT. I've been involved with SWAT for a while, and SWAT teams are not a emergent resource most of the time. There are some exceptions, but this is a pretty small community, so that SWAT team is probably made up of patrol police officers, people on the street that then go in for the team. And a lot of SWAT teams are that way. Only when you get to pretty big municipalities do you have like a dedicated on-call SWAT team. SWAT teams are pre-planned. So they do, your barricaded armed suspect. They'll do, a planned breach at like, say, the Vegas shooting. They went in and they had a plan and they were brought in because they had a specialized skill set. And it's not to say that the SWAT team isn't going to be utilized on a school shooting, but at no point should you be waiting for a tactical component because they're going to take a little while to spool up. They need to operate on a little bit more information than a patrol deputy gets there. So, yes, if you have SWAT officers and you have a team like right there, great. They can go in and do it, and they're going to do a good job most of the time. But if you're a team that it's going to take a while to spool up, nobody should be waiting for you to intervene when loss of life is concerned. So that's kind of my take on that. In these cases, a lot of times the SWAT teams will come in, they'll gear up, and they'll do the secondary search. They'll clear the building again, and then they'll secure the perimeter, and that's going to be their role going forward. A bomb squad, that's usually tied in with the SWAT team, will have a lot to do as well. I'm not assigning blame here. I'm not saying that, this was every single one of the cops on scene was a coward. Like, there's a lot of confusion. You've got incident command saying this thing, don't do this, do this. Like, there's this huge question of liability in certain situations, and not many people have a full picture of what's going on. Things definitely went wrong. Like, there were definitely wrong decisions made, but I don't know exactly why those decisions were made the way they were. And I really want to leave you with that, is that we're going to learn a lot more about this incident over the next month. But it's premature to assign specific blame in specific places right now. Every major incident has things that need to change, and we need to do better. And I hope that departments watching this are, one, getting their people trained up, getting the right equipment with patrol deputies, especially if you're a small outfit. Where I came from in Iowa, it was a very small sheriff's office, but those deputies were squared away. They could basically do everything a tactical team could do as a one-man band in their car, because they didn't have a lot of help. It took time to spool up the tactical team, so they were able to be self-sufficient. Breaching tools, shields, less lethal, all of those things were at their disposal. And then finally, I hope we're looking at this in the medical community and going, what can we do right now? Politics aside, there are actions we can take that can help the next time this does happen. So on the EMS side of the house, a couple things I did want to touch on here is the difference between a SWAT medic or a tactical medic and a rescue task force, and kind of how those would mesh in this kind of situations. If I say rescue task force or tactical medic and you have no idea what I'm talking about, and you're in a community that does have a tactical team that serves them, I would research that and see if you can get your leadership on board with something getting started, at least start training with the police department, because I think they're kind of a big deal. A tactical medic or a SWAT medic is going to be a medic assigned to a SWAT team. They deploy with SWAT. They're armed, unarmed, sworn, unsworn, you name it. There's a ton of different roles that they might fill, or different looks that they might have. They are not a mass casualty response medic. If you look here, this is my tactical medic bag. And I've gone through it a couple times. It has 2 tourniquets. It has enough to treat 2 people for major bleeds, and that's it. That's because a SWAT medic's primary role is to stay with the SWAT team and assist injured officers as they're going through the clearing process. That's not to say that once the suspect is down, they're not going to turn around and start rendering aid, but the primary role of a SWAT medic is not mass casualty response. Mass casualty response, especially in an active shooter, is going to be performed by rescue task force, even if it's an impromptu rescue task force. So this is an EMS agency, fire agency arrives on scene. You have the officers, hopefully there's contact teams in there confronting the shooter. They've at least isolated him, so he's not just roaming the halls going to surprise you, but they've isolated him to part of the building. You're going to take an idle officer that's standing there. They're going to take a component of them to protect him. They're going to go in and they're going to start dragging kids, teachers, whoever's injured. They're going to drag them out of the school, start treatment, put them in ambulances, and get them to the hospital. If you can't make full egress, if you don't have the manpower to do that, fine, you're going to find a classroom, you're going to make it a casualty collection point, and you're going to start dragging people into this semi-safe area, and you're going to start treating them until you can get them out of the school or building safely. I'll leave you with that. Agree with me, disagree with me, leave them in the comments down below. I'm going to be a little bit faster to block comments, ban people on this one, just because it is such a serious situation. So if you have some good, helpful discourse, great. If you're just going down there to troll, I'm going to pull you off this pretty quick. So look forward to hearing your response, and I will see you next week.